On February 12, 2026, whispers filled the corridors of Buckingham Palace as secret memos were reportedly leaked to senior staff. Cameras flashed outside while aides scrambled, hearts racing, to decide the next move. King Charles was rumored to have given Prince William full authority over the royal estate, an unprecedented step in modern British history. But what betrayal by Camilla, the Queen consort, could have triggered this shock transfer of power, and why did the palace keep it hidden for weeks? The morning at Buckingham Palace was unusually silent. Phones lit up in rapid bursts, and a tense hush fell over the hallways. Staff whispered to each other, eyes wide, while footsteps echoed sharply on the marble floors. Something had changed. On February 12, 2026, secret memos were reportedly leaked to senior palace staff. The documents were said to reveal disputes about estate control and responsibilities. Even aides who had worked there for decades paused, frozen, reading the memos with tense expressions. King Charles immediately called for a private meeting with Prince William, signaling that this was more than routine palace business. The memos hinted at issues that had never reached the public, involving decisions that broke long-standing protocols. Phones kept buzzing as aides tried to understand the potential consequences. Cameras outside the palace reflected the sunlight in quick flashes, showing the world that something unusual was happening inside. The palace staff were worried. Could this leak be a sign of a bigger problem? Some whispered about potential shifts in authority. Others scribbled notes, trying to track every detail. The documents reportedly included suggestions for managing estates and financial responsibilities differently, but no official confirmation of their full content was given. The tension in the air was almost physical, like a storm waiting to break. The question now loomed: what did the memos actually reveal about Camilla's role? And why did this information surface now, at this exact moment? The real reason for this tremor wasn't in the memos, it was in a hidden palace corridor. The palace felt heavier that evening. Lights flickered in the halls while aides whispered urgently to each other. Some stopped mid-step, glancing at the doors as if expecting someone to appear. Cameras outside reflected bright flashes from the setting sun, adding to the tension. Camilla Parker Bowles, the Queen consort, was at the center of a reported controversy. Allegedly, she had bypassed normal approval channels, making decisions on property and royal titles without informing King Charles. This was unusual. The palace has strict rules, called royal protocols, which explain who can make certain decisions. Breaking them is very serious. Staff reportedly froze as they read the memos and saw the changes she had allegedly signed. Phones buzzed non-stop, and aides scribbled notes, trying to piece together her exact actions. The media had already started noticing unusual activity, although there was no official confirmation. Some claimed she had acted independently to secure certain estates and manage finances without the usual oversight. The palace reaction was immediate. Charles reportedly learned about these actions late in the evening during a private briefing with top advisors. The room was tense, filled with whispered alarms. Staff feared that her secret steps could threaten not only palace rules but also trust in the monarchy. But then, questions arose about her intentions. Was this a simple mistake, or a deliberate move to gain more influence? The open loop remained: what exact step did Camilla take that crossed the line? And how far did her influence reach before Prince William intervened? Because the next move doesn't happen in public, the palace was already bracing for fallout. The palace corridors felt charged that evening. Footsteps echoed sharply as aides hurried past, whispering and glancing nervously at the closed doors. Cameras outside flashed repeatedly as reporters tried to catch a glimpse of what was happening inside. Prince William was reportedly called to Buckingham Palace for an emergency briefing on February 12, 2026, at 6:45 p.m. Staff noticed the seriousness in his stride, a mix of focus and tension on his face. Inside the meeting room, William was handed the memos detailing Camilla's alleged actions. According to reported sources, she had bypassed standard protocols in managing royal estates and finances, decisions that normally required King Charles's approval. Advisors whispered urgently about the possible consequences, some frozen in disbelief. The documents showed potential risks to estate management, property oversight, and even ceremonial duties. Phones buzzed constantly as aides tried to track every detail, sending urgent notes to legal and financial teams. William understood that this was not just a minor issue. He reportedly realized that the trust within the royal family had been shaken. Every decision he made in the next hours could affect both public perception and internal palace operations. The tension was almost physical. Staff whispered in short bursts, their eyes darting between papers and each other. Here's the twist. Some decisions could only be made under the king's legal authority, meaning William needed clear instructions, and fast. The open loop remained. What legal powers did King Charles have to transfer authority so quickly? And how would William navigate this sudden responsibility while the palace and media were watching every move? And that detail changes what happens next. The real decision wasn't announced yet. By the next morning, Buckingham Palace was buzzing with tension. Cameras clicked as reporters lined the gates, their lenses reflecting the rising sun. Staff inside whispered in urgent tones, some frozen mid-step, others scribbling notes frantically. The palace phones never stopped ringing. February 13th to 14th, 2026, UK tabloids and broadcasters were full of speculation. Headlines asked if King Charles had lost control of the royal estates and whether William now held full power. Even though there was no official confirmation, reported sources claimed that the palace press office was scrambling to manage the story. Social media was alive with gasps and trending hashtags questioning royal loyalty and authority. Staff watched on screens in the corridors, their eyes wide as debates unfolded online. The tension inside mirrored the chaos outside. The scene felt almost electric. Some aides whispered that Camilla's alleged actions were the spark behind the growing storm. The palace PR team had a delicate task. They had to control public perception while keeping details of Camilla's moves secret. Reported insiders said that every statement was carefully drafted to avoid revealing internal disputes. Cameras flashed constantly outside, and footsteps echoed in empty hallways as aides rushed between offices. But then, another question arose. Could the monarchy maintain public trust while handling such a sensitive internal crisis? The open loop remained. How could the palace manage both power and perception under this intense scrutiny? And what would happen if the public discovered the full extent of Camilla's alleged betrayal? But the story doesn't end there. This is where it turns. The palace felt tense as evening fell. Footsteps echoed down the hallways, and aides whispered urgently, glancing at each other with wide eyes. Phones buzzed constantly with updates. Cameras outside reflected flashes from the streetlights, showing the world that something major was happening inside Buckingham Palace. This was the night the truth came to light. Camilla reportedly bypassed approval for royal estate contracts and proposed title changes without King Charles's knowledge. These actions broke palace rules, called royal protocols, that explain who can make important decisions. The breach forced Charles to take unprecedented steps. He gave Prince William full authority over estate management, finances, and ceremonial duties. Staff were reportedly frozen in disbelief, some pacing as they tried to process the sudden shift. The tension was almost tangible, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. William immediately began reviewing every estate document. Sources reported scribbling and whispered consultations across the palace corridors. Cameras outside caught the movements of aides as they prepared to manage both legal steps and public communications. This betrayal was more than breaking a rule. It was about trust, control, and the future of the monarchy. Every decision from this point could shape the royal family for years. Camilla's alleged moves were reportedly subtle and calculated, leaving almost no public trace. Yet they created a crisis severe enough to require Charles's direct intervention. While the public had seen flashes of tension and media speculation, the full extent remained secret inside the palace walls. The open loop remained. Did this betrayal have consequences beyond the palace walls? Could the monarchy survive this without losing credibility? And that's where the real trap is hidden, beyond what anyone could see. The palace felt alive with urgency. Footsteps echoed through the corridors as aides hurried between offices, whispering, their eyes darting at every closed door. Phones buzzed non-stop. Legal teams were reportedly reviewing centuries of royal law while Prince William prepared to assume full authority. Cameras outside captured flashes, reflecting the world's growing curiosity. Time was pressing, every minute mattered. Inside, lawyers explained the royal prerogative, the legal term for powers the king can use to manage estates, titles, and finances. In simple words, it is a special rule that allows the king to make big decisions for the monarchy. Using this authority, Charles could transfer estate control to William immediately, even in the middle of a crisis. Reported sources said advisors debated every clause, ensuring that every step followed law and tradition. Some aides were reportedly frozen in disbelief, realizing that this level of decision-making had rarely been exercised in modern history. William now had responsibility for estates, finances, and ceremonial duties. Staff whispered, "Every move counts." Phones lit up with memos, and every document was checked multiple times. The legal steps had to be perfect to prevent future disputes. Here's the twist. While Charles had the legal power, public opinion and palace reputation also weighed heavily. Any misstep could spark more media storms. The open loop remained. Could this legal maneuvering fully prevent future leaks and conflicts? How would William maintain authority while keeping both the law and public trust on his side? Because the next consequence isn't just legal, it's deeply personal. Outside Buckingham Palace, the world was watching closely. Cameras flashed as reporters jostled for position, their voices mixing with the sounds of passing cars. Inside, staff whispered urgently, their footsteps quick and tense. Phones buzzed constantly with updates, while screens displayed the growing storm of social media. Public opinion was becoming as powerful as palace rules, and every action mattered. Reported polls from February 2026 suggested that citizens were confused and concerned. Some expressed support for William, seeing him as a steady hand, while others questioned the secrecy around Camilla's alleged betrayal. Social media was alive with debates, trending hashtags, and shared opinions, all amplifying pressure on the monarchy. Staff inside the palace monitored the responses closely, feeling the weight of public scrutiny. The tension was almost tangible, a constant reminder that perception could affect authority just as much as law. The palace PR team worked quickly. Reported sources said statements were carefully drafted to protect the monarchy's image while avoiding disclosure of sensitive details. Aides scribbled notes, tracking every reaction and planning strategic communication. Here's the twist. Even with William now holding full authority, the palace had to balance legal control with public trust, knowing that one wrong move could trigger further crises. Cameras outside reflected the urgency, capturing aides' worried faces and the constant flurry of activity. The open loop remained. Could the monarchy survive this scandal without losing credibility? How would William manage authority, trust, and media pressure all at once? And the answer depends on a move nobody outside these walls can predict. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was tense but focused. Footsteps echoed softly on the marble floors, and aides whispered as they prepared final documents. Cameras outside caught flashes from the street, reflecting the world's curiosity. On February 2026, King Charles officially handed full authority to Prince William, covering estate management, finances, and ceremonial duties. Staff reportedly let out quiet sighs of relief, some whispering softly to each other as the historic moment unfolded. This move resolved weeks of uncertainty. The palace had acted decisively to maintain stability, following legal and procedural steps while keeping Camilla's alleged betrayal largely out of public view. The decision ensured that the monarchy could continue functioning smoothly, with William taking a leading role. Although legal authority now rested with him, the palace knew that trust, reputation, and public perception would remain delicate for some time. Cameras outside reflected the tension slowly easing as aides left the offices, their footsteps echoing through the now quieter corridors. The big mystery from the hook was finally answered. Camilla's secretive actions had forced Charles to act, and William now held the authority to protect both the estates and the monarchy's reputation. Yet even as this chapter closed, questions about loyalty, family dynamics, and public scrutiny lingered inside palace walls. The open loop closed, the mystery of Camilla's betrayal was revealed, and William had taken control. But the consequences and future decisions would continue to shape the royal family's path. The palace doors closed, but the story, and its consequences, had only just begun. What do you think? Can William keep the monarchy united after this betrayal? Should the palace have told the public about Camilla's actions sooner? And how might this power shift change royal traditions forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe now to follow more royal secrets, palace decisions, and behind-the-scenes stories from Buckingham Palace. Stay updated on every historic moment and shocking revelation as it happens.